In today's video, let's talk about youth baseball tournaments and this big problem of run differential and running up the score. So I'm Dan Blewett. I'm a former pro pitcher. I also owned a baseball academy for a long time, and we had our own travel team. So we went to tournaments and we did this whole thing. And I think there's so many things that are broken with youth baseball tournaments, besides the insane fees and the gate fees, which are just abhorrent and unethical. There's also just so many gameplay issues that come from the timed games and from these big tournament formats where they have to figure out, all right, we've got 3 teams that are all 3-3 after pool play. Which one's going to advance? So they have to break it down by, well, who did you beat? And like run differential or run given up or run scored against. The run differential thing is a really big problem. And what it does, it encourages teams to just absolutely embarrass other teams and run up the score in a way that they wouldn't otherwise do. And it incentivizes them to keep their best players in the game at all times to continue to run up the score and to prevent more runs from scoring to make that run differential gap as big as possible. And this is what really sucks. Here's the way real baseball is played. My team is losing 10-2 in the 4th. All right. Our starters we've already taken our starting pitcher out because he didn't have a very good day. We've got a bunch of players. Our starters haven't played that well. We're down 10-2. Okay. So what am I going to do as a coach? I'm going to get one of my worst couple pitchers a bunch of innings. I'm going to get players off the bench to get some at bats. And I'm going to take some of my starters and I'm going to put them on the bench because this game is already mostly out of hand. Sure, we could come back, but this is what happens when you're blowing someone out or you're getting blown out, is you start to get innings in low pressure situations for players who aren't as good and aren't as used to the spotlight. So 10-2 games are useful to good coaches. 10-2 games are useful in helping other players work on stuff they wouldn't otherwise work on. Say we've got a pitcher on the bench who he's pitched a couple times and, he's still figuring a lot of it out, right? He's walked a bunch of batters, so we can't trust him in a 4-3 game, right? His control is too erratic. But now that it's 10-2 and the game is already essentially probably a loss, we can go out and put him out there for a couple innings, give him a little bit of leeway, let him walk a few and figure things out. That is a really positive piece of development for him. He gets a longer leash than he otherwise would have. There's less on the line. He just gets to go out there in a game situation and work on things. Another pitcher, all right, he's really been struggling with his changeup. So let's give him an inning tonight. Throw a bunch of changeups. So the game's already at a hand. Let's work on that tonight. It doesn't matter what happens. I just want you to throw a bunch of changeups and be free and just do your best and work on that. Hitters who've been struggling, let's get them off the bench and get them a couple of bats. It doesn't matter what happens. So it takes the pressure off and we don't have to worry or take heat from parents who are like, why is he in there hitting? Well, the game's not on the line. So we need to get him at bat so that he can get his confidence up and get his swing ironed out so that when we do have a tight game, they're ready to hit and have a great game. This is how this whole thing works. But when we have this run differential junk where teams are incentivized to get the biggest run differential gap that they can, now me as a coach, we want to move on to the next level. So now it incentivizes me to keep my bench players on the bench and to keep my starters in the game so we can run up the score or try to bridge that gap or try to get those runs back so we can close how much we lose by. Ultimately, it doesn't matter how much you lose by. It doesn't matter how much you win by. It matters if you win or you lost. But these tournaments take so much of that out of it where, okay, we're only going to finish 5 innings because the game time limit is 1 hour and 40 minutes. So we don't even learn how to play in the 7th inning with the game on the line. We lose that aspect. Now we're just trying to score as many runs as we can. Is that even baseball? There's just a lot of problems. So what I would suggest, I'm sure this will fall on deaf ears, but what I would suggest is capping run differential. If you win, maybe it's capped at like 6 or something. That way teams are de-incentivized to keep running the score up. And I think some tournaments do that. And if you're a tournament director and you do that, kudos to you. But you should cap run differential in both directions. So if you play, you win 3-2, you win 4-1, and then you lose 17-0, your run differential shouldn't be wrecked by one game, right? There should be some sort of average. That's why there should be a cap, or there should be some other formula, again, that closes those gaps to a more reasonable level where one game is not going to ruin you and you're not getting benefited. Say you lost to the best team in your bracket, you beat the second best team in your bracket, and then you just destroy this really bad team in your bracket. You beat them 18-2. That doesn't mean, that's going to really change your run differential, but it doesn't mean that you're like this dominant offensive powerhouse. You played a couple tight games against good teams, and you just beat the brains out of a bad team. So we needed to sort of fix this situation so we can get players their developmental time, so coaches are continued to be incentivized to give their lesser players innings in lower pressure situations, whether they're winning or losing, and we can get back to playing real baseball. So this is just a quick rant. Parents, you should understand this is how this works in general, and you should talk to your coaches about this. Like, hey, when our team's up or down, what's the plan? How can we get kids in there who aren't doing as well? That's a big part of being a good coach, is figuring out how to allocate playing time in a way that makes sense to keep your team both competitive, but also to get everyone their innings and their at-bats. All right. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll see you here in the next video.